All right, Justin. So a fastball is obviously the first thing that most kids learn how to throw. What would you teach as the second pitch for a budding pitcher?
It would be the changeup. And honestly, I think the changeup is the best pitch in baseball,
All right.
regardless. Like, I would choose having the nastiest changeup over throwing 110 miles an hour.
Really?
No, I'm completely serious when I say that. Like,
But if you
I
couldn't throw 110 miles an hour, then a changeup is just a slow fastball.
and people will, well, it's yeah, but the changeup, every hitter is trained to hit a fastball,
Okay.
right? And every pitcher throws a fastball. So when I say that I want to have the best changeup, that is because the changeup's going to come in looking like the fastball that everybody wants to hit. So that's the pitch that I would choose to develop right after I learn my fastball. I've got command, and it starts really at a young age. You can learn a changeup like as soon as you get into little league. Really, you can start to throw it. Um, and so the more comfortable you can get with that pitch, it's definitely a feel pitch where you have to throw it a bunch to where you get the feel for it coming out of your hand, where you know where it's going to go. So my own personal grip for it is something like this. Um, I kind of try to stack up as much of my own hand on this inside of the ball, wherever my thumb is. So I have my thumb on the seam at the bottom, and
So that's pretty close to a circle change. Is that what I've?
yeah, and you can call it a circle change if you'd want to. And I have a little bit of pressure on my thumb and ring finger, so like that's really where I'm getting the ball kind of secured,
Okay.
and then everything else just kind of falls into place wherever feels natural.
Yep.
I'm trying to throw my thumb at the catcher, basically.
Okay.
And so by throwing my thumb at the catcher, it starts to create this ball. In your hand naturally will pronate because you're looking for perfect side spin on the ball. That's how you know that's like the best changeup spin you can get, is because it's going to just look like a fastball, and then it's going to just have a late drop at the end. So
Mm.
if it's spinning perfectly sideways, and so the reasoning to have a little bit of thumb and ring finger pressure is when it comes out of your hand, that's going to just having the pressure on this two fingers is going to just keep it in your hand long enough to try to have it spin just like that off your hand.
So because a changeup is, what, 10 miles an hour slower than a fastball?
If you've got one 10 miles an hour, you are pretty elite with that distinction. So like that speed difference, I should say.
Okay.
So anywhere from 8 to 10 miles an hour is like awesome for changeup speed, and probably 5 to 7 is like average.
Okay.
Uh, and if it's 5 to 7 and it has that late movement, you're fine. Like, and basically, I would even be okay with having 3 to 4 miles an hour difference
Hmm.
as long as it has that late movement, because the
Gotcha.
hitter is going to look and recognize that as fastball and then gone.
Yep.
So even if it's slow, like I'm not necessarily worried about a speed difference immediately when teaching it to kids. I want to see that late movement. And the way you create that late movement is by getting the spin on the ball that you want. So if some kid who's really young has to, you know, basically throw almost like a palm ball because his hands are so small, that's fine. Because eventually, as he gets older, he'll be able to, okay, my hands are big enough now, I can shift it over. I like this grip where it's thumb ring finger pressure. I get it, my thumb and ring finger on some seam, and then kind of let everything else fall into place.
Where does the side spin come from? When you're actually releasing the ball, where does that side spin come from?
So when you're releasing the ball, your hand, and for me thinking I'm going to throw my thumb at the catcher,
Yep.
that helps with pronation, and the ball will come out of your hand, and it should, like, when it leaves your hand like this, it should hopefully, your ring finger should hopefully be the last thing off. And if your ring finger is the last thing to come off the ball, it's going to create that side spin. It can even spin like this, but
Yep.
that's just how you're trying to get it to come off your hand and have that ring finger drag it so that it starts to spin.
Gotcha. Drag it like that.
So
Okay.
that helps with that ring finger and thumb pressure. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be like really squeezing it, just enough so that it stays in your hand just a little bit longer.
Yep.
And then it should start to have that late movement. So that's really what I try to look for in changeups, is that late movement. Have it some action straight down in the zone. And that way hitters will swing over it. They're looking for that fastball, and it's going to appear like it's going to come on that same plane, and then it's going to fall right off, and that fastball will carry through. So
I feel like I'm going to have to watch this video a couple times to go back through all the details of it. That's a complicated pitch. I didn't realize the changeup was so complicated.
yeah, and it's really as much as it try to complicate it, you take your grip and you let your grip do the work. You know, it's fastball, arm speed. You get the grip, and the grip is what's doing the work. So if I'm going to teach anybody the grip, you know, your changeup is a fastball, but with a different grip. So throw it like a fastball, throw it hard, and let the grip do the work.
There you go.